morning, guys, and welcome back to another coffee catch up. For today's coffee, we're going to be chatting about letting ourselves feel. Why? Because I feel like forcing us all to get super vulnerable and super raw, because it wouldn't be a coffee related catch up, coffee talk related. I don't know what I'm trying to say here. It just wouldn't be us if we didn't. So let's jump in. One thing that I've been struggling with a little bit more lately is allowing myself to fully feel. Now, it's something that I talk through with my therapist quite often. I'm sure she's sick of hearing about it, honestly, but truly, it's one of those things that I am a very, very sensitive person, and I do feel, don't get me wrong, I just mean that there is a big part of me that resists feeling things, even if they're happy things, because it's almost like the theory of if you peak, then you just see it all. And I feel like sometimes my feelings are so overwhelming to me that if I even let them in a little bit, it's almost like they just throw my whole world off its axis. And sometimes it's awesome if it's like feelings of just being like really happy and in love and excited about life. But anytime I'm going through a phase of my life where I'm stressed or I'm worried, you know, there's something in my life that I may not be so happy about, I get really good at just like turning that off and just zoning in on what I need to do, and that is a very unhealthy thing to do. So I want to talk about it in case any of you guys relate. The thing is if we shut off all the bad in the world, then we're never going to fully be able to feel the good. So we have to get better at being comfortable with all feelings, whether they are good or bad, in order to allow ourselves to be able to enjoy life at its fullest. So as I've mentioned, I have been working through this question myself, and I've had a bit more anxiety, and by a bit I mean a lot more anxiety lately than I was just even like back in, I would say, September. I don't even know when it really started. It's hard because I deal with it sometimes on a little bit on a daily basis, and then there's like these bigger waves of anxiety that come into my life. So it's really hard for me to say exactly when it started, but I have noticed more recently just my body reacting very similarly to past times in my life where I've been very anxious, and I'm consciously aware of it. I'm becoming curious about it, if you will, but I'm trying not too hard to attach to it. I'm just trying to allow it to show me what it's wanting to show me. So lately I've been feeling the waves like this, not so much like this, and in that wake of these waves, I've been trying to ask myself, like, what am I so afraid of? What is fear? Like, we've talked about this in a coffee catch-up, but I wanted to know what it was rooting from for me. And one thing that definitely kept on boiling up when I was thinking about it, meditating, when I was journaling about it, was I'm afraid to feel fully because of how fully I feel. The weight of the world is heavy, and I say that, like I mentioned, as a sensitive person, where I don't just feel things at a 5% capacity, I feel things 120%. So when there's bad things going on in the world, even that triggers me to want to basically put all my guards up all the time, because even just letting a little bit of caring about the environment into my life, all of a sudden I'm in tears. Like, I'm exhausted. I'm crying so hard from crying over like a documentary about the environment. Like, that is how my emotions run. And so lately I've noticed that my fear has been turned up and my emotions have been turned down, and I've been questioning, like, why am I not letting myself feel? What am I so afraid of? And the more that I was asking myself this question, the more answers kept coming up. I'm afraid to feel, like I just mentioned, I watched a documentary recently. It's Our Planet. It's on Netflix. So good. I highly recommend. But just watching how much our world has changed in the last like 50, 100 years even, was just like, I'm getting emotional right now. But like, it's just so, I couldn't, like, it was shaking me. And then just watching anything online, any kind of like documentary of any sort, any kind of good change, any kind of things that make me feel really happy and beautiful, but those are things that I'm like, that can steer me off course, and I don't want to fully feel that, because if I fully feel that, I'm vulnerable. The thing is, I tend to also turn off my emotions when there's just things that I just don't want to deal with, when there's hard things that I don't want to deal with, and that's something that we all do. I'm sure there's so many of you guys out there that can relate to that. Like, something crappy happens and you just want to be like, nope, not going to deal with that. But if we don't allow ourselves to face it, if we don't allow ourselves to fully feel it, then it never really gets tucked away, and it never really hides. I mean, it might disappear for a while, but it'll eventually boil up in somewhere else in your life. And I'm talking even just, I'm a big believer of this, as of just like the books I've been reading recently have been all about how we hold emotion, and if we don't let that resentment and that even if it's not resentment, it can be sadness, it could be anxiety, it could be fear, it could be something, anything really. But if we don't let it go, if we don't express it in some way, it never fully goes away. So we root it in our bodies. And sometimes that can turn into stiffness, that can turn into illness, that can turn into irritability. That to me turns into anxiety for sure. There's so many different ways that it'll translate for us, but either way, if we don't allow ourselves to feel it, we never fully get rid of it. And my whole life have gotten very good at thinking I'm getting rid of it by just turning it off, but that doesn't get rid of it. That just puts pause. Like, it'll either boil up later on in my life, or I'm sticking it so far deep inside of myself that it's basically hurting me in terms of my soul, or hurting my body, or it's coming out in some kind of like digestive issue or some kind of stiff neck. It is crazy when you start to make these connections how rooted it all is, at least in my belief system. So when it boils down to it, anytime I come up with a problem, I'm always, or at least I try to ask myself instantly, instead of getting wrapped up in the problem, what can I do about it? So when I was thinking about this problem in particular, why haven't I been letting myself feel, what can I actually do about it once I feel? Like, if I do feel and I allow myself to feel and it's heavy, where do I start? And so when I was coming up with the answers, I was, again, just kind of like free writing, and it just boiled out of me to just be like, just start with yourself. That's the only place you can start. There's so much going on in the world that we're afraid to feel. And I get that because I'm the same way. Like, hearing about how our environment was changing made me feel so anxious and so sad and so overwhelmed, on top of all of the things that I'm already dealing with in my daily life. Like, that can be overwhelming for especially sensitive people. And if you're a sensitive person out there, you probably, even just thinking about feeling those things makes you feel like, you just want to run away from it. But if we start with ourselves, then we're able to slowly but surely just open up this comfort zone of allowing ourselves to feel, to grow bigger and bigger, and allow more things to kind of process through our bodies. So for me, it's starting on where I'm at today. Then I go back to, what have I not dealt with? What is something that pops up a lot in my life from when I was a child, a teenager, whatever. And slowly but surely I'm trying to inch out my feeling circle so that I'm an open person again. Because like I said, I don't think that we can live our brightest and our lightest if we don't allow ourselves to feel not just the good of life, but the bad of life too, and to learn from it and to process it so that we can continue to create more good. So there you guys have it. I feel like I rambled longer today than usual, but if you guys want a more in-depth talk about this, let me know and we can chat about it in a coffee talk podcast or maybe a bigger video. And I hope you guys are all having an amazing morning, and I'll see you guys all tomorrow. Bye.